Awesome. Thanks, Nolan. Okay. So here we are, and we are so blessed and fortunate to have Dr. Silas Rao, who is founder of Vegan World 2026 and a major leader and inspiration for me and for most of us on this call and thousands of people beyond, probably closer to hundreds of thousands at this point, having concluded recently an amazing tour of India, and he is all over the place. So super blessed, super excited. Silas, I'm just going to let you give a more complete introduction to yourself and the topic and the context of the topic. And then you let us know when you want us to jump in for discussion. You lead the way. I'm here to support. And thank you so much, Silas.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Jamin. Yeah, so I have been talking about healing the planet and how not to go extinct over the last, I guess, 2 weeks. This is the third presentation that I want to do with you. And today, appropriately, it's about social changes that need to happen. And let me start sharing my presentation. Okay, so this is what are the social aspects of the transformation that needs to happen. If we are interested in healing the planet and taking care of our health so that we don't all die of viruses or whatever, or bad things that we do to the planet. So this is the third in the series, and I'll have 4 more over the coming weeks. And once we have all of the presentations done, we'll upload all the webinars on climatehealers.org/webinar. Right now, we have the previous set from last year, videos from the previous set. So I don't want to change out just these 3 and then have the other 4 being inconsistent. So we're going to do it all together. So social, right? So we've been talking about social distancing as an appropriate response to the coronavirus pandemic. To me, this is a signal from nature saying something is not right with the way we are connecting with nature and the way we are connecting with each other. And so we have been given an opportunity to think about things. So I was told that, Isaac Newton, when he was doing his scientific work, that was during the time of the bubonic plague. So people were quarantined during the bubonic plague. And during the time he was quarantined, he sat there and he figured out the whole idea of calculus. So we have been given something very similar now. We have an opportunity that's very similar. We've been asked to think about our interaction with each other, our social connections with each other, and our social connections with nature. Because it's really, the social connections have to be with all of our family, not just our human family. So I talk about changing our story. First of all, we have to change our story so that we talk about the David that we've been creating as opposed to the mess that we're creating. We shouldn't be focusing on the mess much more. And we should be focusing more on the David. So, I went through this story during the overview. So imagine that, Michelangelo, after finishing carving David, if you find him just trying to kill himself, and you stop him and say, "Why are you killing yourself?" And he says, "Well, I look at the mess I made with the pieces of marble on the floor. So how am I going to clean that up with a hammer and a chisel?" That's exactly what the situation that we find ourselves in. We have been using capitalism, and capitalism is the way in which we have been heating up the planet, and it does a great job for heating up the planet. And now with the pandemic, it's actually making capitalism look like it's not going to continue. You cannot keep growing the economy when we are all sitting at home. So we have to figure out a different way of organizing ourselves. And we have to figure out how we are going to take care of all of our sick people and how we are going to take care of all of nature, given the circumstances that we are in. So it's like telling Michelangelo, no, you need to change your tools. You need to change your tools. You need to start using a bucket and a shovel to clean up. And then we can all take out our cameras and start taking pictures of the David, and we'll be spending lots of time enjoying the work that we have done. Okay? Because we have done something amazing as a species. We have actually created homeostasis for the planet. And now we have to change how we interact with the rest of life and with each other so that we can enjoy the fruits of our labor. Back in 2009, I was in this sanctuary in the Western Ghats of India, and it was absolutely beautiful. You can see how beautiful it is. So I took this picture from the roof of the house that we were staying in. And in this sanctuary used to be a coffee plantation 20 years ago. And the owners basically tore down the fences and gave it back to the animals. And the animals came and did this. They just lived, and the forest came back. Because the animals came and dropped new seeds and new trees were born. So every animal basically fits beautifully in this ecosystem. Because every animal implements what is known as the vitality code of nature. Receive all that you need, give all that you can, and become all that you are. Okay? And routinely, animals give more than they receive. And this is why the forest flourishes, if they just live. So I asked this owner, what did you have to do besides letting the animals live here? And she said, we had to put a fence and, patrol the land and make sure that no human being comes inside. So it made it seem like, human beings don't belong in nature. So the first thing that we need to do with our story is to tell a story in which we do belong in nature, exactly as we are. This is the new story that we need to tell. And once we realize that we do belong in nature, then we find our place. And we'll find how we interact with each other, how we interact with other life. So the story has to change. The story that we're telling is a story of separation. And this actually has origins in religious texts. The story of separation comes from the Old Testament, where human beings took the fruit from the knowledge tree and ate it and got banished from Eden. So we got dismissed out of nature. So that's the way we interpret this story, even though I think the story has much more profound interpretation. And I came to this more profound interpretation by a very circuitous route. So I also bought into the story of separation, that I don't belong in nature. So I don't belong in my own home, which is the forest that I was looking at. And this owner was telling me that he had to keep human beings out of that forest. And they say that when the student is ready, the right teacher comes. So a year later, my granddaughter was born. And when I held her for the first time in my arms, I had the same feeling of perfection that I had at the sanctuary. And she's right here behind me now. And so she convinced me right away that we do belong exactly as we are, and that I have to find a new story in which we belong exactly as we are. So I started doing my research. And when I started doing my research, I found that there is another story in the Vedas that's identical to the knowledge tree story in the Bible. It's slightly different. And this story helped me understand the story in the Bible. So let me tell you this story. So it's a story of a fig tree, not an apple tree. It's also a knowledge tree, but it's a fig tree. And the way it's described in the Vedas, it is an upside down tree. So it's an upside down tree with its roots in the sky and its fruits on the ground. And the story begins with children playing with sticks and stones and rag dolls on the floor of their hut in the middle of the forest. And their uncle comes to visit them. And the uncle says, "Hey, why are you playing with sticks and stones
when you have a wishing tree?
When you have this wishing tree right outside your hut? Go out under the tree and wish for anything you want and it'll give it to you. Then you can be playing with real toys instead of these trifles." The children don't believe him. How can there be a tree like that? So they wait until the uncle leaves, and then they rush to the tree and they start wishing. They wish for sweets and they get them. And they gorge on the sweets and they get stomachache. They wish for toys and they get them. And they play with the toys and they get bored. Then they wish for fancier toys. And that leads to greater boredom. So there was something about this tree that the children did not understand. It grants you what you wish for, and along with it comes the exact opposite. The children didn't know that. All they knew is that they couldn't stop wishing under the tree, and the more they wished, the more miserable they were. Then they get to be young men and women, and now they're wishing for what young men and women wish for. The 4 main fruits of the tree were sex, fame, money, and power. And with each comes its opposite, and the result was more misery and suffering for the young men and women. Then they get to be old men and women, and they congregate under the tree in 3 different groups. The first group says, "You know, we were so happy when we didn't know about this tree. It has all been a hoax and a farce. You know, it's ruined our lives. We were so happy when we didn't know about this tree." And the stories, they were fools because they hadn't understood this tree. And the second group says, "We must have been wishing for all the wrong things. I'm sure if we could go back and wish for different things, I'm sure we'd have been a lot happier." And the story says they were bigger fools, for they understood less than nothing about this tree. And the third group was the most foolish of the lot, for they come under the tree and they say, "We are so miserable, we wish you were dead." And the tree grants them the wish. And they're immediately reborn underneath the same tree, because the tree always grants wishes in dualities. Okay? So the story doesn't stop there. And it talks about a lame child who was also watching all this from inside the window of the hut. He also wanted to go out and wish for a good leg so he could walk. But there was such a crowd of people under the tree and he couldn't get through. So he stood there and he watched. And he saw how the tree was making everybody miserable. The people who were wishing were miserable. People who were trying to get to the tree were miserable. And all the animals were suffering because of all the wishing. People who were trying to get to them were suffering as well. So and then he had a brilliant flash of insight. He was the only one who understood the tree. And with that understanding, he began to feel a well of compassion come from within him for all the suffering under the tree. And he lost the desire to wish. He became detached from the tree. And with that combination of compassion and detachment, he was the happiest of the lot. So that's where the story ends in the Vedas. And then in the Upanishads, where they explain to you what they taught you in the Vedas, they say that the wishing child and the watching child are inside each one of us. That's our duality. Okay? And so that makes it seem like if you really want to be happy, you have to stay with your watching child and observe your wishing child. In fact, the purpose of all meditation is to help us get in touch with our watching child and to observe our wishing child. So that question comes up in the Bhagavad Gita, where the explanation for this is finally revealed to us. In the Bhagavad Gita, this is a story of God talking to man. And in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna, the man asks God, "Why should I wish under this tree? You know, you're God, so you take care of the problem. So let me just sit here and meditate upon you and I'll be perfectly happy." And God says, "No, I didn't create this wishing tree so you could just stand there. How do you think I do my work? Through you. So you have to wish under the tree. And then he taught him how to wish. He said, if you go under the tree and you wish for yourself, you're going to be unhappy, just like those people who were wishing under the tree. But if you go under the tree and you wish for the benefit of everyone else, and you say, I don't want anything from this tree for myself, then you'll be perfectly happy wishing under the tree, and everyone will be happy because of your wishing. So you see, selflessness, in that sense, is the highest form of selfishness. And as a species, we should be using this tree to wish for the benefit of every other species. And so far, we've been using this tree to wish for just our benefit. Okay? And that's why we have created this mess. So it also helped me understand the story in the Bible, because in the Bible, Adam and Eve got banished from Eden because they ate the apple themselves. If they had used the fruit of the knowledge tree for the benefit of other species, I'm sure we'd still be there, right? At least that's the story. So we'll be back in Eden when we start using our knowledge for the benefit of other species. And that is what we are asked to do now, as the climate regulator species of the planet. So that's our role. So we have a role to play. The role for human beings is to be the climate regulators of planet Earth. And we have done a pretty good job on that role so far. So if you look at the temperature on Earth over the last 3 million years and the CO2 levels, they've been going up and down because we have gone through so many ice ages. So we've gone through over 100 ice ages. And in the current interglacial period, human beings kept the temperature constant. It would have done exactly what it did 3 interglacial periods ago, except we kept the temperature constant by burning down forests and raising animals for food. So we raised the methane levels and we raised the CO2 level in the atmosphere. And so those are greenhouse gases that increased in and essentially kept the temperature constant for 10,000 years. And prevented the Earth from going back to another ice age 5,000 years ago. Okay, so it would have done that 5,000 years ago. And so now over the last 200 years, we have raised the temperature by another 1 degree Celsius. And in the process, we have created all the tools and technologies to understand what we have been doing. In fact, it's a good thing that we have all the scientific knowledge so that we don't ascribe all these people dying of the coronavirus to some supernatural force. Instead, we know it's a virus. So now we can go back and figure out how to deal with it, right? So this scientific knowledge has helped us understand what we have done so far so that we can take on our true role as the thermostat species of the planet. So in this projection that Bill Rudiman did in his book, he's assuming that we'll continue doing what we're doing and basically kill ourselves off, and then the Earth will go back to another ice age a few thousand years later. So that's his projection. And I'm saying, no, we don't have to do that. We can actually bring back the forests. You can sequester all the excess carbon in the atmosphere and then keep the temperature where it was in the thermostat setting. And that will be the role of future generations of human beings. So this to me is a transformation. It's a transformation in our role from heating to cooling, okay? Which is a very drastic change. This is really like going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, from a predator role to a caretaker species. So a caterpillar is a blind consumer, just continues to consume mindlessly until it consumes so much that it cannot grow anymore. And human beings are at that stage. We cannot grow our economy anymore. Okay? And then we are forced to stop. In nature also, the caterpillar is forced to stop. Who knows what tells the caterpillar to stop? But the caterpillar stops. If the caterpillar would consume like that for 1 year, the caterpillar would have eaten the whole forest. Instead, the caterpillar stops, builds a cocoon around himself, hangs under a twig and meditates for a week. And inside the caterpillar, all the cells become different cells. They become imaginal cells first. And then the imaginal cells figure out what the butterfly should be. So each imaginal cell determines what part of the butterfly it's going to be. and becomes that. So then when the butterfly emerges from the cocoon, the butterfly is a very discriminating consumer. It only sips nectar from flowers, and in the process pollinates the flowers and regenerates life. So we are now being because of this coronavirus pandemic, we are now being put into the cocoon. We have to think about what are we going to do, right? So we have created three major messes: climate change, mass extinction, and healthcare. Healthcare, if we continue with business as usual, we'll likely bankrupt by 2026. That's what Kim Williams said. But we are on track to do that today if we just let the coronavirus pandemic go out of hand. Okay. Mass extinction, if we continue with business as usual, will likely kill off all wild animals by 2026. So all these messes that we have created can be mitigated and reversed if we all adopted a compassionate vegan ethic. Okay? It can be reversed. So these are the 7 core shifts that I've been talking about, and I'll go through that a little bit more in detail. But everything is making us go towards this massive transformation in human society from what we have been doing to what we need to do. And I see the coronavirus as us being thrown into a cocoon and made to think about and imagine what we will be when we come out of this. How we take care of each other, how we change our social interactions with each other, how we change our social interactions with animals, so that we can minimize the pandemics coming to us. Right now, we are getting a pandemic once every 100 years, let's say, right? So, and we are getting new diseases once every few years from the animals, because we are killing over 1 trillion animals. I mean, 2 to 3 trillion animals every year. So we're constantly interacting with them. And in a vegan world, we will minimize our interaction with them. So imagine that we reduce our interaction by a factor of 100. So instead of a pandemic once every 100 years, we'll get a pandemic once every 10,000 years. And that becomes much more manageable, right? So this is a homework assignment that we have during our quarantine period, figuring out what a vegan world would look like. So imagining the transformation that needs to happen. And I think we have to work on this new app, the Aquarius app, so that people, when they use it, will start thinking differently from the way they're used to thinking. And we have to implement the Vitality Code among us consciously, so that each of us become all that we are, receive all that we need, and give all that we can. And when we implement this consciously, I bet you that each one of us will be giving more than we receive. So then each of us become an asset to nature. So here are the detailed social shifts, from carnism and speciesism to veganism, from colonialism to decolonization, from sexism and heterosexism to gender equality and justice. So the new game that we build has to have everything on the right-hand side, has to implement it automatically. From racism to racial equality, from rising inequity to radical equality, from individualistic to community-oriented, from competition to collaboration. So in fact, all our games have to become collaborative games as opposed to competitive games. And in fact, I play speed with my granddaughter. Speed is normally a competitive game as to who finishes first. In our case, we are figuring out how the cards in each of our hands and figuring out who should put first in order to maximize what we are putting together. So it's a very collaborative speed game, right? From hierarchical to cooperative and consensual, from secrecy and lies to openness and truth, from endless war to durable peace. And this is forcing us to do that. All of us around the world have to come together to figure out how to solve this problem of this pandemic. From selfishness and greed to selflessness and contentment, from exclusivity to radical inclusion, from domination control relating to partnership respect relating. So all of our relationships have to change. So you can see that this is a completely different sociology. that we are creating. From individual transparency and institutional privacy to individual privacy and institutional transparency, the exact opposite of what we're doing today. From normalized violence to normalized non-violence. And our education system, right now, it's creating bureaucratic administrators for the empire. That's the job of the education system right now. And instead, we should be creating climate healers. People who are well versed in how to deal with the climate, how to take on our role as the thermostat species of the planet. And a couple of years ago, we came up with a whole list of questions. In fact, we had 2 boards filled with social questions on transition. And here are some of them, How do we end toxic masculinity? So we have a study group for that. Even though it's not been active, but I think we need to activate all these study groups now. You need to start answering these questions and creating like recommendations for people. So I really see that this is the time in which we want to get active on creating a specification for a vegan world, a visioning exercise from people around the world getting together and visioning out what a vegan world would look like. That includes answering all of these questions. And one of those, how do we end toxic masculinity? We started that study, but it has to basically end to at a point where we have a recommendation for how do we deal with this. Unifying Vegan Study Group. We also had a study group active on this. Here are the new model questions that we came up with. And you can see, each of these questions have to be answered. We have to figure out how to do these things. How do we relate to animals how do we deal with animals eating crops in gardens? How do we transition to a culture of normalized nonviolence? All of these are questions that have to be answered. Do we have to have prisons in the world? How do we deal with people who are not playing by the rules? What are the rules? So there is a lot of work to be done. And I invite all of you to join the Vegan World 2026 project. And we'll be having a lot more focused summits in the future. We'll be announcing that. We have a summit starting in a couple of weeks, but 10 days. That's an interview per day. And then we also have a health conference happening in April. So we want to create conferences now around each of these topics. And where I want to invite people who have been studying these topics to come and tell us how can we make this transformation happen from where we are to a vegan world, and then start writing out the specifications for this. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Beautiful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me stop sharing. Do you want me to?
Okay, I'm gonna also share my screen. Not my screen, my video. How do I do that? Okay, I will figure it out. Here. Hi. Thank you for the presentation, Dr. Rao. I just read this morning an article from this guy, Carter, that I mentioned once in your webinar, and you told me that you were going to meet up with him because he has like a similar views. He's a vegan, he writes for the Sentient Media, right? This morning, he sent this thing called Farming for the Planet. And I'm gonna share it on the chat box.
Right.
So it's brand new, but it's an ongoing topic that he's very interested in, and so am I. And I bring this up because in the last paragraphs, he's saying, and I'm gonna also share that in the chat box. Telling people what to eat has rarely been successful endeavor. Instead, what does work is shifting infrastructure.
Right.
Consider the change in infrastructure in Copenhagen, and then he goes on and say, like, how biking in Copenhagen didn't happen out of the blue, like it was a design.
Right.
So I would like to ask you about how to connect this to what we need to do and to the game that you're presenting. You know, like what is the new game in relation to this design of the infrastructure of the world that your granddaughter is going to inherit?
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have to explain to people that these pandemics that we are getting are zoonotic diseases. They're coming from our interaction with animals. Okay. And so it makes no sense for us to continue with the same interaction with animals while trying to address the pandemic. So people are quarantined, and our government is sending us food, right? Whatever. Why is the government sending us animal foods? Didn't someone have to go and interact with animals again? Do exactly the same stupid thing that caused us the problem in the first place, right? So we have to reach a point where we have to be open about it. We have to be transparent about what is really the cause of it. So far, no one is talking about what is the cause of this, what caused this pandemic to happen, and getting into the depths of it. Then you can tell people, look, this is why we are giving you vegan food. This is why we have to create an infrastructure for vegan food. Okay? And also because the main risk factors for the mortality for this pandemic are chronic diseases like diabetes, heart disease. All of those can be reversed if we just give people good food. So it can be managed easily and reversed. So in every way you look at it, it makes sense for our so-called experts and our scientists to talk about this, to be open about this, and to tell people as to why they're only getting vegan food now. Okay, whatever it is, because someone is giving you food. Why should they go and get someone else to go and interact with animals in order to, kill an animal and give you that food? It makes no sense anymore. So, but we only reach that point when we are transparent about what is really happening. We have to tell the truth. Right? So far, we have been invoking all these all these zoonotic diseases, and then figuring out vaccines for them. That's been our mode of operation. Okay, and we've gotten away with it for a long time. But looks like it's getting worse and worse. We're not going to get away with it for too long. I mean, this one is a game changer. This particular pandemic is a game changer because it is projected to infect 40 to 70% of the people. And if it has a mortality rate of 3% or anything close to that, literally the human population is going to come down at the end of this year.
I completely agree with you with everything you have said. And Dot is on the chat box. He usually doesn't interact verbally or in video, but he's asking if I could mention that he also put an article and a quote on the chat box that it says, globally 73% of all antimicrobials sold on Earth are used in animal raised for food, which is also like supporting your arguments, right, Dr. Rao?
Right.
My point is like, what is our focus on the pathways to build this infrastructure? Like, how are vegans having like a lobbying power, or the financial power, or the cultural power to change this infrastructure, to make it easy for people to get this whole food, plant-based vegan food as cheap as a burger in Burger King, but not GMO Impossible Foods burger, right?
Yeah, so we have to have a conversation with the majority now. We have to have a conversation about laying it out, telling them look, tell us why we are wrong when we tell you that this is where it came from, and why are we still subsidizing animal foods? Why are we still subsidizing the killing of animals, which is the root cause of all of these diseases that we're getting, right? So maybe government should give out vegan food for free. And if people really want to eat meat, they have to pay for it. Okay, it should be reversed, right? So when you quarantine people, do that. And there is a strong reason to do that. You're trying to reduce your medical costs. Otherwise, you're going to go bankrupt. See, we always operated on the assumption, right? When the pie is bigger, there is more for everybody. This is what Dr. McDougall told me, and he's written about it. He's written about it. He said that when he goes to insurance companies and he tells them, look, if you just educate people to eat vegan food, whole food, plant-based diet, then you will save this $90,000 you're paying for the heart procedure or for all these complications from diabetes. So even if it costs you $9,000 to educate the customer, you're saving $90,000. So isn't that a great win-win for everybody? And the insurance company told him, no, it's not. It's only when the pie is big, we get a portion of the pie. So we get a bigger portion, when the pie is big. When people are getting all these heart procedures, we have a huge healthcare system. And so we get a portion of that, 40% of that, whatever it is, right? So that's the problem we face, because it's a very systemic issue. It's the game that we are playing. And now the entire game is going to just go wacko, right? Because we don't have the money. If 40% of the people contract this disease and 20% of them have to be intubated and have to have breathing apparatus and all kinds of things to help them get out of this, we don't have the infrastructure for it. So it's up to us now to say, let's do everything we can to minimize how many people have to get to that critical stage. So within 1 month, you can reverse diabetes, you can reverse heart disease. Within 1 month, if people are getting the right foods. So it makes sense for us to do that so that we have less complicated infections that we have to deal with.
Beautiful. Thank you. Myra has her hand raised. Great to see you, Myra. Welcome. Take it away, Myra.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you all. I honestly believe that we are in a very interesting part of life as of right now. And what makes me, in a way, very happy and very peaceful, even though everything seems to be chaotic, but is the fact that coronavirus, one way or another, is going to have to bring consciousness for people to stop eating meat, wild animals, domestic animals. Our bodies are not meant for that. The only issue here is trying to, everyone here present, to come together and to do a small clip video and talk about this, because we can go 24 hours talking about it right here in this 24-hour block party, which is amazing. But we also need to take those 20 minutes of our time and invest it in sharing with people, our loved ones, or social media, what we know. For instance, we know that H1N1, HIV, SARS, all these viruses have been a cause of consuming meat, whether they were also built in laboratories because they were playing with the different bacteria and viruses that wild animals have, or domestic animals have. I don't think it matters to this point now, because that coronavirus is already released and it's already out of control now. The other thing that I find very interesting, Dr. Sailesh, is that I was watching Guru Lucy this morning, and she was saying, in order for you guys to avoid, maybe not at 100%, but a high percentage, is to stop eating lactose and dairy, because the more dairy you eat, the more cheese, the more milk, cow milk that you eat, the more yogurt, your body builds more mucous membranes. This makes it easier for any type of bacteria or virus to come to your body and to stay there alive for a longer period of time. So what is this coronavirus telling us? What is life telling us of right now? I see it that not only you're not supposed to eat meat, you need to really stay away from dairy also,
Right.
because you are more, how would I say it, in a higher rate of obtaining this virus. So for me, I honestly think that it's a beautiful time of this year and this era where we are living, and we need to bring that consciousness up to people. Maybe a lot of people won't listen to us. Maybe they'll think that we're crazy because they cannot live without meat. But at least a little percentage of people that we can make aware and let them know, look, leave those animals alone, please. Do it for your own health. Do it for the best of Mother Earth. We're gonna help her heal if we leave those animals at peace. I feel so sorry for maybe all the human beings that are gonna be struggling with this pandemic. And it is already known that obviously people that are older, and I believe even young persons are gaining it right now, but that just tells you that your immune system is really low. And you're not gonna make your immune system any stronger if we continue with our own eating lifestyle. So
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys, but my perspective, I'm enjoying every minute of what I'm seeing. And I'm also on social media constantly telling people, get out of your panic, get out of your fear, eat properly, quit buying toilet paper, get yourself on the grocery store and start consuming vegetables and fruits, get outside, touch the earth with walk on the earth, receive the sunlight. This is gonna help you boost up your immune system, and you can avoid having this type of virus attack your immune system. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Yeah, and the good news is, because of the cancellation of all the sports events, I was invited to talk for an hour on some mainstream radio station in Long Island about the coronavirus. And that was meant to be an NBA slot or something like that. It was supposed to be an NBA commentary slot or something like that, and that got canceled. So they're looking to fill in those slots, and they're talking about this now. So yeah, so I'm going to be talking at 3:00 Pacific time on Long Island Radio.
Is this today?
Today, yeah, about this issue.
Okay, nice. Well, make sure you share the link where we can log in and listen to you talk right there.
Sure, I think it has been shared on Basecamp, but I'll share it on chat here.
Okay, thank you.
Beautiful. And while Silas is doing that, if there are more questions or comments, love to hear them. And Silas, I really loved what you're sharing about this homework assignment that we're all been given.
Right.
We're all like inside this caterpillar cocoon. Brilliant. That's exactly it. And since we can't go out and interact in public now in gatherings, the way to gather is here in this virtual world, which uh, we're finding, a lot of us are finding, gives a lot more clarity because it's simplified. It's just pure connection. We're connecting with our minds and our hearts and our words, and we don't worry about logistics.
Right.
I have to go there to see you and drive my car, and then I can only stay for so long because then I have to go someplace else. And of course, that's why we created the block party as a 24-hour event. Just come and hang out with us. That's
Right.
you ain't going anywhere.
No, we've been given the tools to do our job, which is to come up with this. I really think that this is the best use of our time, to determine a set of specifications for a vegan world. Visioning. Let's vision it, and then figure out how to implement that as we come out of this cocoon.
Definitely. And I agree at 110% with you, because if human beings are set to put aside for quarantine, and then they get this vaccine, we're only falling into the same. It's almost like when the HIV was announced back in the 1970s, but then we're still in the same lifestyle. And then it's almost like Mother Nature says, okay, you guys haven't learned. Okay, now let's do H1N1. Oh, here comes another vaccine, and here comes, okay, we didn't learn. Now let me throw it here for you guys a little bit more stronger. Maybe if you guys will get the point. So I honestly feel that, with no doubt, the healing of humankind towards every creation, it starts within ourselves. And if we don't bring that consciousness aware of who we are and why are we here for, and what is the whole purpose, then we're still going to be in the same repetitive cycle. And what's going to happen? Well, then, hey, mass extinction is here. Well, then Mother Earth says, you know what? I'm sorry. I need to heal myself. I'm going to get rid of all this bad cancer that is attacking me.
Yeah, but I like to tell the story that Mother Nature is actually benevolent. So she is giving us slightly worse. It's not a pandemic that's going to kill all of us. It's just slightly worse. Are you going to learn? So she's gently waking us up, saying, "Learn," and because obviously, for the temperature to stabilize and for the Earth to have homeostasis, we need to be around. We can do a lot of good for the planet once we recognize that we have also done something that was good, even though we didn't realize it.
Definitely. I honestly believe that the 2026 vegan world, it's going to be here with no doubt. It
Yeah.
is, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially with this
Right.
coronavirus going on. I think that was a big quantic step towards the vegan world, 2026, maybe even before 2026.
Yeah, definitely it's bringing us all together, right? We're not thinking about war with Iran and things like that anymore. We're talking about how do we help them? How do we help each other get out of this mess that we are in? So it's definitely brought us, it has the potential to bring us together as humanity, and then help us become a better stewards of the planet.
Yes, I agree with you. At 110%, it is what it is. We need to guide those people that are maybe a little bit unaware to stop buying toilet paper. Please, people, stop buying toilet paper and just buy yourself fruits and vegetables, rice and beans.
Now, there's always that instinct to hold and be sure, right? But I don't know why the priority is towards toilet paper.
It's gonna be a very interesting memory. It's almost like oh, I wish, you know what, at this very moment, I wish I had a corporation that produced toilet paper because those people are benefiting economically so bad. But
if you think about it, the entire economic system is being called into question now, right? Because it's not you cannot grow anymore. People are sitting in their own places. What are they going to do? How can they grow the economy beyond what it is what already is? Right? So we're going to be seeing a lot of revenue shrinkage across the board. People don't drive as much, so which means the mechanics are going to be not working as much, because I'm not going to be taking the car out from an oil change for 2 months now instead of 1 month, right? So you see these ripple effects throughout the economy. So the entire old way of doing things is being called into question. So I think this is a game changer.
it is, and we needed that. We definitely needed that. I heard that, I don't know if Jorge can confirm that. I know in Mexico City, I think the dollar is worth almost 23 pesos. I don't know what's the consequence going to be with Mexico with this big, I don't know much about that whole stocks and all this stuff, but I do know that there is going to be really bad consequences
Right.
in Mexico, especially regarding this situation. Well, I'm going to say every place in the earth.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about the exchange rate today, but yeah, it has been going up like crazy. This is a sign that the economic system is a complete joke. It's already collapsed, and we hope that it's not, but it's showing us that it's completely non-scientific how it moves up and down. Like, it's moved by forces that doesn't have to do anything with the local needs and cultures of the people.
Right.
So it's already collapsed. So I don't pay much attention to that unless I need to exchange $2. But yeah,
Right.
it's going up.
And if I may, Silas, I really like what we were talking about earlier about the example of Denmark that made it easy for people to adopt bicycling, and then it became a part of the culture. I think now with the coronavirus and learning from the example of China that let people stay in their homes and bring the food to them so they don't have to go out into the markets and restaurants and shops and all that. I think we have an opportunity here to create a system, and in fact, just had the flash of inspiration yesterday that here on Whidbey Island, we could start something like that, where we deliver healthy vegan food to anyone who needs it. We just go and do the deliveries and form a volunteer corps. I think once we start it, it'll become very popular. And of course, that's going to require a whole set of controls and everything, making sure that the people who are making the food don't have the coronavirus, the people who are distributing it, et cetera, protect themselves, leave the food on the doorstep, don't open the door, wait till the person has gone, then get your food, et cetera. Systems for washing the reusable containers and all that. And so I think this can be an impetus for leading that transformation. We're certainly not going to be distributing meat, right? For a whole host of reasons. And so we can simultaneously take out the coronavirus and end world hunger by organizing ourselves this way. We have super abundance of food. It's just that we're feeding it to these miserable animals born into captivity, who are raised only to be killed and eaten. So anyway, your thoughts on that, Silas?
No, that's exactly what I see happening. We need to do this because when people are stuck inside closed doors and you don't want them to come out, they have to eat. So in China, they were bringing food. And I don't know what kind of food they were bringing, but I would be shocked if they were bringing meat and, wild meat, especially bat soup and things like that. because that would be foolishness, because you're inviting the same catastrophe again every time. So, I mean, we have this is forcing us to rethink who we are as a species and as a society, because if we don't take care of the homeless, or they don't take care of people who are sick, they're going to infect all of us. So it's in a way asking us a question as to who are we as a society? Are we willing to take care of the least among us? Because if we do, then you take care of all of us, right? Because otherwise that one person can go around infecting lots of others, and then, you know, it spreads. So it's either Medicare for all or coronavirus for all. That's that's the options we have, right? And it's food for all. We have to give them good food.
Hello, everybody. I'll just quickly interject. If you go to 60 Minutes Australia, there's an excellent undercover report on what they call the wet markets, where many wild animals from all over the world are brought in and slaughtered, and bats and such. So we really, as you've said, Dr. Rao, need to change, but it's not just these wet markets, it's the whole industrial animal agriculture and dairy industry who has to cease operations. Last week at this time, I gave Dr. Joe Vipond, who is president-elect of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Unfortunately, I've not heard anything back from him. It's rather disappointing that's taking so long, but we need to put pressure on physicians, because the health consequences of this are so serious. I would think that somebody could actually say there's grounds for malpractice. The fact that this information is not changing the way we live, and for all of its health benefits. Any thoughts on that?
No, absolutely, you're right. And I think we need to maybe even file a malpractice action against the American Medical Association for not talking about this. You know, this has to be front and center in the discussion. Because this is preventing any future pandemics, because every time someone buys an animal product, it's actually a veganism, right? Because anytime someone buys an animal product, it triggers a series of events that leads to another human being going and exploiting another animal for the replacement product. Okay? And that interaction could be the cause of the next pandemic. So who knows? This is why you need to minimize these things. You need to leave them alone. These animals have to live their own lives without being constantly corralled and killed. Even domestic animals that we feed all these antibiotics to, right? So they are breeding viruses and bacteria that are immune to those antibiotics. So which means we don't even have a defense if something jumps across the species barrier. And we constantly have people going around slashing their throats in factories. So it's not just the wet markets in Asia, it's all the markets. You know, it's H1N1, swine flu, they came from regular markets, these so-called non-wet markets. So unfortunately, by focusing just on the wet markets, we are trying to portray it as the Chinese problem. It's not a Chinese problem, it's a worldwide issue. It's all of us. We are all complicit in this. So the entire system has to change. But I think the more of us go and talk about this, and more of us go and ask questions of our doctors, and say, why aren't we not talking about this? And only then I think we can raise the temperature on this and get people to pay attention to us.
And Dr. Clapper did an excellent presentation. I think it's called the Ocala Veg Festival. Go search out that video, everybody. He talks about, as a medical doctor, the importance of a whole food, ideally, whole food, plant-based diet. I'm going to have to run. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Miles. Good to see you. We'll see you a little later.
See you, Miles.
Well, I think we've got such a solid foundation here. Silas, I don't know what you think about having a little brainstorm session about the steps that we're going to need to take to go from here to this food distribution system, because it seems we're at a very critical moment. I mean, obviously, those of us who can have stockpiled what we can of, food and other vital supplies. But think about, I don't know what percentage of the United States that lives from paycheck to paycheck and really doesn't have the capacity to stockpile much of anything. And with businesses closing, these people are even losing their paychecks, right? And so now they're left with doubly nothing. And so, I mean, what are they all supposed to do? Go out and rob rich people's homes, rob businesses that have closed their doors, go out and panhandle? Well, no one's walking around on the streets to give out change. So the panhandling sector is really under pressure. So we need to figure this out quickly. Anyway, I'd love to brainstorm it, but this is your time, Silas. So.
Oh, no. This is exactly what it's for, Jamin. I mean, your brainstorming is right on point. Because I think that you're talking about practical solutions right now, for what's happening on the ground. And what I'm offering here in this hour, I'm discussing things is how do we, when we get out of it, how do we organize ourselves differently? How do we organize ourselves now, differently? So that we start thinking about all of this put together. It's not just one single thing that we need to address, right? It's a complete system transformation. So I'm telling people, I want all of us to imagine that we are in a cocoon, that we are the imaginal cells, and that we are now trying to figure out how to create a butterfly out of us, out of what has happened now. And so we have to imagine the butterfly, we have to vision the butterfly, and then we have to play our part in it, right? We have to become parts of that. So yeah, I think, all restaurants are closing down. Restaurants are having businesses shut down. There's no point in giving them loans, because that's like a temporary fix that you're doing. This virus is with us. It's going to be with us for a long time. It's going to become part of our, just like influenza, you have another one that comes along. So I think that's the information, that's the reading I get from the infectious disease experts, right? So that being the case, I think we need to take this thing much more seriously than patchwork solutions. I think President Trump is on TV now. He's making an announcement. I don't know what he's saying, but he's putting an announcement. Yeah, chilies on wheels, vegan chili for people in need of a warm meal. That's an amazing idea, right? So imagine taking these people who work in these restaurants and turning them into these people who provide these meals, funded by local governments, or funded by people who have wealth, who are, at least in the current system, you can take the wealth that you've collected and use it for this larger purpose and help create the new system. It's going to come out of this. And eventually, I think we have to have our own currency for these things. We have to have our own currency for the vegan world anyway. And a different way of distributing resources around. This is also a time for us to say, all nations are in this together. So it's no longer rich nation, poor nation, dichotomies. So if people in poor nations cannot handle the epidemic, they're going to come and infect all of us eventually. So you better go and solve it for them too.
Absolutely. So I'm sort of envisioning a system where basically, say 90% of people would just stay home. The 10% who don't are in these vital sectors like agriculture, like trucking, distribution, restaurants, as you just mentioned, Silas. In fact, their business should grow, right? Because now suddenly everybody needs their product and delivered. So we need more delivery people. And so, you know, my thoughts go all the way from the big system macro planning of all this, all the way down to the very local. And I'm sort of a bottom up thinker. Well, I like to do both actually, but from the bottom up perspective, here on Whidbey Island, I would love to organize a whole channel, a whole, you know, video conference and series of meetings on that channel, specifically around getting Whidbey Island fed and starting to pioneer this and pilot it. And then if other groups would start in different parts of the world, we can all come together and share, just like we're doing here at the block party,
Right.
and figure out best practices and all that. You know, how do we test people to make sure, you know, do they have the virus? Do they not? If they don't, okay, great. How do we keep them from getting the virus while doing their job, right? So, and Silas, as an accomplished engineer, you can certainly appreciate the need for mapping this all out step by step and having metrics and measurements at every stage and whatnot. So we need to apply our collective intelligence to designing this system, piloting it, getting the word out, inviting the rest of the world to participate. And I think this will become a heck of a story, because it'll just be such a positive, feel-good story that the media, I think, will love to cover. We need some good news after so much bad news. And yeah.
Yeah, we are not too far from that in this country also. You know, I mean, the governor of Ohio actually had a news conference where he said that his public health people are saying that around 100,000 Ohioans are already infected. And the only reason we think the numbers are low is because we are not testing them. So our test system is completely botched at the moment. And so if that's the case, we are going to be in a quarantine very quickly. You know? When we find out how many are infected, we are going to try and spread it as slowly as possible, so that we have otherwise our healthcare system is going to be swamped. So that's the reason for social distancing and reducing interaction between people is to slow the spread of the disease. And all these hygiene that we do to slow the spread of the disease. It's not that we know that we're going to get it, but we just want to get it, 6 months down the road, maybe a year down the road, not immediately, so that we don't flood the hospital system.
All right, Dot has put in the chat names of a couple of groups. Let's see, the Chili on Wheels, and she's put a link to their organization, and then Food Not Bombs.
Right.
Another such group.
Yeah, these are groups that, Food Not Bombs, I know they feed the homeless, or anyone who comes, but they do it like once a week. And these are volunteers who are doing it in the present system. But we are looking at something much more organized and feeding the whole community, not just homeless people, feeding the whole community, and making sure that it is healthy, good, nutritious food. We can have PCRM come and tell us what kind of food should be cooked. In fact, one of the best meals that I ever had was at a PCRM banquet, and it was completely whole foods, plant-based.
What's PCRM, Silas, for those who don't know?
Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. So these are doctors who are promoting a whole food, plant-based diet. And so they have an annual annual meeting that happens in Washington, D.C. every year, and they get thousands of doctors coming and attending. And so they had a banquet last year that I attended, and it was an awesome meal.
Beautiful. Well, we should get all these folks into collective intelligence gathering, whether here at the block party or,
Right.
you know, and in fact, let's start carving out time in the block party to talk specifically about this and plan it so that we can take this time that we have and really plan this out and prototype it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I can involve them. Actually, I can ask Dr. Barnard to see if he would send someone to talk about this, to vision this idea out.
Would love it. Would love it. And, you know, beyond these video conferences, we of course need to develop a more robust, complete system so that we can have, you know, bulletin boards, Facebook groups, whatever it takes to get the word out and bring people together. We were talking about this earlier, the different facets of collective superintelligence and the different tools and web services that are needed to really make it robust. So necessity is the mother of all invention. So we certainly have the need now to get this all buttoned down. I would love to see, you know, a web page or Facebook group or something where we can have a list of all the different efforts around the world, even like a map. So wherever you are, just find yourself on the map and look for the red pins that indicate groups or organizations that, whether they're doing something like this or simply have the intention, so we can bring them together in community. And then of course have these larger planetary forums where we talk about the different models, the testing procedures, and how we can expand those out. Anyway. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dot has written, you know, the PCRM also works on moving away from animal models for any kind of testing, and there are more accurate models that you can come up with that are based on, you know, software and chemical models, you know, that work better than sticking it into an animal. We need to get away from all of those unnecessary interactions with animals.
You know, if I were a restaurant owner, right, I'm just trying to think, what's it going to take to help, you know, get some of these restaurants to take the lead on this and start to pioneer it. If I were a restaurant owner, I would think long term here. I'd say, okay, what do we need to do to make it in the short term, and then how do we, you know, go from short term to longer term? First of all, from a marketing standpoint, in whatever community, if you're a restaurant and you take the lead and you're on the news and everyone's talking about how you're feeding the community, guess what? When this chapter is over and people are going out to eat again, where do you think they're going to want to go? Your place. Furthermore, this is a way to not go bankrupt, right? If you're able to keep your employees, you know, paid and your business running, right, then you don't have to go bankrupt. You don't have to shut down. And there will be support. I guarantee it. There will be support. So I think what I'm putting the call out for is restaurants who would be willing to take the lead, jump out and start to pioneer. And it's delicate because we need to have safety as just a built-in part of it. And so I think for the folks who do the deliveries, you know, they need to basically wear some form of a hazmat, right? Certainly a mask, gloves, etc., and procedures for delivering the food. And if we're going to use reusable containers, which I would love it if we could, we also have to consider the risk factors in that itself.
Right.
But, you know, and maybe we don't solve all these problems at once. The most urgent thing is to get people fed by whatever means. And so I just see a huge opportunity for certain restaurants to take the lead and, you know, pioneer this.
Yeah, I can imagine this happening in ASU. ASU has now closed down, Arizona State University. So they're only holding classes online. So the city of Tempe is now pretty much on lockdown because they're concerned about the spread of this. We have to do something about this. We can't have people coming to cafeterias anymore, right? So which means food has to go to them. It is crazy, you know, that we aren't already talking about this. We should be talking about this. We should be figuring out how to do this in ASU. In fact, I'd like to find out what is really going on there.
Mm. Mm.
You know, because there are vegan restaurants that I can get involved with, you know, making this idea, implementing this idea in Tempe. The vice mayor happens to be vegan in Tempe.
Awesome. Awesome. So I say let's definitely block out some time for next week's block party, and then let's be very thoughtful about who we invite to join this conversation. Let's invite restaurant owners, food distributors, farmers, and my feeling is that, you know, build it and they will come. Let's start with seeding the world with a few examples like these
Right.
that are working, and then, you know, celebrate those models, propagate those, create this online community so that any community can bring together their restaurateurs, their food distributors, their bakeries, etc. And so we can get more of these models going. And then I think the funding will have to come. I mean, we will figure it out whether it's using the Ahimsa currency or a new currency or old money for a while, whatever it takes. But I think this is just such a profound moment where we can make this shift from caterpillar to butterfly, starting with the most basic needs. See, if we start with food and water, for that matter, and start with these most basic problems, then using the same distribution network, we can do medical supplies, medicines, even services brought to specific locales. And I just see the benefits for this collective intelligence expanding, because basically to be a part of it, to participate in this, even to receive food, it helps very much if you get online and make yourself known. This is how many people are in our household. This is where we are, you know, and we're out of food. And we don't want to have to leave the house, but of course we will if we need to go out and get food somehow, etc. And of course, identify those neighborhoods that are most high risk, be very proactive. You know, go out and literally put leaflets on the doors, put flyers on the doors. Here we are, here's how to get in touch with us. We will be back. So even if you have no phone service, no way of communicating, we will be back. And here's when we'll be back, and we will have food if you need it, right? And in fact, maybe even fill out this little checkbox survey and leave it on your door so we can get, I mean, you know, we have to consider all cases, elders who have no internet access, etc. And just start this massive outreach. It seems to me also that since the city of Seattle was the first American city to kind of take the lead with the problem, let Seattle take the lead with the solution. We live outside of Seattle, north of Seattle on Whidbey Island. Right. I'd like to start something here, which is, you know, a much smaller population. There's a lot of wealthy people on the island who could support this. There's already some, you know, local food systems and whatnot that can be built upon. But wherever we start, let's make Seattle just a case study in how to feed an entire city safely and keep people quarantined.
Right. No, that's a great idea. And I think Seattle, the governor of Washington will also be very much on board once you explain why it has to be like this. It cannot be burgers being sent out to people, because that's really asking for more of the same problem.
Yeah, and also it's burning through way more grain that could go straight into people's stomachs,
Right.
and we'll have, many multiples, much more food and calories to meet the needs of such a large population. And also for food safety, for spoilage, etc. For all these reasons, all the signs are pointing towards veganism as a diet. And like with that chili on wheels, we just need to find out the most sensible way of distributing that food. Again, I'm all about reusable, but then in this context, how do we do that? Well, look, if people are going with hazmat suits to drop off clean food, maybe like an even more hazmat protected team could go around with a giant bag and take the dirty containers and take those back for cleaning, industrial cleaning and reuse.
Right.
There's got to be a way. I just don't like the idea of all this single-use stuff getting thrown out. But again, if we have to start with that, let's start with that. Because if we don't meet people's nutritional needs, it's going to be utter chaos, and a lot more crime, a lot more theft, and a lot more spread of disease in the process. Dot writes, with chili, you could just pour them in jars. Yeah, definitely. In fact, that's a really interesting thought, Dot. So it's like people who want to be refilled, leave your clean empty container on your porch, and we pour it in there. That's a very interesting thought. I like that, Dot. I like that. Interesting. Anyway, let's keep brainstorming on that.
We could also go for green slime.
Yeah, green slime is a code word that Nolan and I use. We make these big vegan smoothies with all kinds of cool ingredients, and it ends up looking like this green slime. So yeah, that could work with green slime. Green slime, there's all your veggies. We got 15 different vegetables in this beautiful, cool, delicious smoothie, fruits and vegetables and nuts and seeds and all that good stuff. And then have a really hearty stew to complement that, where you get, whether it's your corn, your barley, beans, corn and beans, rice and beans, make complete protein, right, etc. So we just got to find the optimal mix and then start buying industrial quantities of these ingredients, get the right restaurant involved, and start doing it.
Right. Especially with the schools being shut, and there are a lot of kids who get their only good meal at school, so who won't be getting that, so it's absolutely imperative that we do this.
Absolutely. So I'll tell you what, here's kind of some homework that I'd like to give out to everyone who's willing, is to contact local food-related businesses and food-related government offices, whether it's social services, whatever, food stamps, etc., and even grocery stores, food distributors, basically anyone and everyone who's related to food. Certainly not, we're not limiting to that, but let's find, and anywhere in the world, whether this is Ireland, England, Indonesia, join us, because we can all learn from each other, and we can figure out where do we start, and how do we start, and how do we care for everyone in the process.
Sounds good.
And yeah, and of course there's hot food, but then there could also be packets of food that could be prepared at home. I mean, you've got people sitting at home with all kinds of time, and as long as they have running water and electricity or whatever, which is a big if, right? Some places are going to be lacking that too. So we need to be prepared. So we can think in terms of both models: prepared food and food that's not yet prepared, like these packets that are put together and then shipped off to places in need. So let's consider both modalities. With packets, we could deliver more food in a single drop and then come back once a week instead of once every couple days or so. So we need to think about that too. I mean, you know, beans and rice are the basis. You know, you get your calories and you get your protein and you get a fair amount of vitamins depending on the beans or the mix of beans. So that seems like just such a basic starting point.
Yeah, my granddaughter actually likes minestrone soup too, which is similar.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Pasta and beans.
And vegetables, yeah, minestrone.
Look at the other vegetables.
Yeah, yeah. And Stephanie in Ireland wrote, this is also a blessing in disguise for collective intelligence. If we managed to brainstorm and implement ideas to cure coronavirus parallel to other talks, while people are on lockdown and on alert and have time to view you, you would definitely have their attention for SRM and other great ideas. Yeah, I had exactly the same thought, Stephanie. It really, this is forcing us all to come together online, which is the perfect place to manifest collective superintelligence. Any meeting of people in person is collective intelligence, but collective superintelligence is where we create this whole planetary network of conversations and facilitate lane changing between topics, discovery of groups and conversations that you had no idea are out there and you can just jump into because they're open to the public, etc. Yeah, this is where the imaginal cells come to imagine together.
Right.
And welcome Zablon and everyone else who's joined recently, whether here in the Zoom video conference or watching live streaming. Thank you for being here. I'm thinking of a restaurant nearby here. It's called Nosh, here on the south end of Whidbey Island, and they make really nice vegan noodle dishes that go into these large kind of cardboard, you know, Asian food containers.
Mhm.
And that's the perfect kind of meal that we could produce in high volume and put in those containers and get them out. I think we just need to start, because once we start, it'll be a story. Once it's a story, people will fall in to support and participate.
Right.
Yes, Nolan. Mhm.
And just from like a tiny amount of Google searching that I've done, it definitely looks like the story is already picking up with these food delivery services like Uber Eats or DoorDash, Postmates that have existed for a while, and I know are at least very active in Seattle for sure. So maybe there's an opportunity there because they already have the infrastructure and the network set up.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Uber Eats and other services like that are, of course, designed for just like point to point. Go from this restaurant to this, you know, one customer and then off to the next restaurant. So it's kind of very point to point. We need to convert that into a more of a volume operation where instead of a tiny little compact card delivering one meal at a time, it's a van or a truck carrying a whole bunch of food and making multiple stops. I'm even thinking from some logistics consulting work I did years ago that we could have a truck, you know, coming from a restaurant or a factory drop off a whole bunch of meals in a given neighborhood to a person in that neighborhood whose job it is then to distribute it to all the houses in that neighborhood or apartments or units or whatever. So I think there's a lot of creative work that's pending to be done here. But then also the homeless populations, as was pointed out, we need to get to the food to them before they're out on the streets coughing and shaking down people for money or food or whatever, opening restaurant doors. Got any spare food, please? right? Because again, there are not the crowds of people walking around dropping quarters and dollar bills into their
Right.
hats. So, you know, panhandling is no longer, is quickly becoming totally unviable as a way of getting by. So we've got to get it out to the homeless people immediately. They're the ones with the least amount of buffer. So let's start there and then work our way through the poor neighborhoods and eventually get everyone. But we got to figure out where to start and how to really make this a revolutionary new thing. And speaking of homeless communities, my goodness, what a great opportunity there to build community, and, you know, start meeting their basic needs right where they are. And then of course we've got all these schools that are closed. Heck, let's move people into those schools for temporary shelter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Medium-term shelters. They're going to be closed for months. Great. We've got, you know, places to house people for months in, you know, relatively isolated conditions. And we can even use the school kitchen to prepare food and deliver it. I mean, a school with all their classrooms and doors and multiple rooms and everything, there's a lot of good stuff we can do there. And in fact, whole buildings, there could be whole buildings for people who are sick, who need to be quarantined, as well as whole buildings for people who are not sick, who need to be isolated from the people who are sick. So there's
Right.
this whole redesign of society that we urgently need to embark upon. And how else are we going to do that other than with collective intelligence? I don't imagine that Donald Trump in that speech that he just gave to the nation has all the details there. We need to work it out ourselves. Obviously, the government's going to do a lot, but we can even help. We can even, as we co-create holistically systemic solutions, we can even tell the government, look, here's the whole solution and here's what we need you to do, rather than waiting for them to tell us what we need to do.
Yeah. Donald Trump is speaking on TV over there.
What's he saying?
He's declaring a national emergency.
Didn't he declare a national emergency a few weeks ago?
I just heard him declare it, so I don't know if he did it before. I think all along he's been saying it's not such a big problem. I think now he's recognizing it as a big problem.
Yeah, this will be his undoing because of, you know, how he famously, you know, blew it off earlier. So I think he recognizes this is his downfall.
So, Jorge over here, if people are wondering what will bankrupt the USA medical system first, if the coronavirus or the eating animal food system, the answer would be they're the same.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So, like Dr. Rao has an opportunity to be on the air in a few minutes, and he is trying to get this message across, and I wish him and the cause all the success in the world. And as a marketer, I would think about ways to make this swallowable to most people, because they don't want to get blamed of what they eat in the middle of a crisis. Like, I wouldn't either, no? Like, if I see all the sick people around me, and on top of that, I'm scared I'm scared that it will affect me, and I'm watching the president on TV saying that it's a national emergency, and all of a sudden there's a radio program saying that I am to blame. I don't know if marketing-wise that would be a success.
Yeah, I don't think we should frame it as people are to blame. It's we have systems in place that are promoting this. We have systems in place that's subsidizing this. When we know it is causing this problem, why are we giving them money to produce more of those? So we cannot, we cannot have a system that is promoting it and then blame the people for following the system. So,
I agree with part of that, but in my perception, the system is alive because of us. Like we feed it with our aware or lack of awareness. So yeah, like to blame the system is like an indirect way to blame us, and it doesn't create the link of our responsibility of it. It's a tough task. I don't have an answer, like to say, okay, who is going to show up and say, I am to blame, I am the responsible one. And everybody would say, like, burn that person alive, right? Because we are programmed like that, like punishment.
This is why I use the caterpillar analogy. The caterpillar should not be blamed, right? But the caterpillar is going to become a butterfly. And without going through the caterpillar phase, there is no butterfly. So whatever we have done so far is leading us towards the butterfly. And whatever we have done so far is necessary for us to become the butterfly. Like I said, if we didn't have the scientific knowledge, we would be blaming some supernatural power for killing these old people. We don't know that it's a virus that's causing this, right? And we won't be able to do anything until a lot of people start dying in the streets, which is what happened with the plague. So in that sense, it's necessary that we went through this phase to get to where we need to go.
By the way, I read your blog post about the coronavirus, and I understand it, and I really enjoyed the most of the last lines. And I would like to bring this topic of these last lines everywhere needs to be the headers, because we're talking way more about these catastrophic scenarios than what you wrote on those last lines of let's get the imagination going. Let's get the conversations at least, the very least, the same number of times we talk with people about coronavirus, at least. And in a positive psychology perspective, positive experiences versus negative experiences are related to the emotions, right? So people like to think that 1:1 is the normal, no? Is that very mathematical? Like it's equal, 1 negative to 1 positive. But in our human experience, the tests mentioned that 3 positive equal 1 negative. So that means that you're nowhere into the negative or the positive. You're just like equal. So high performance teams have a ratio of 5 positives per 1 negative. So if we translate that into what is going on right now in our narrative, we're talking like 20 times more about New York City being flooded, or a meteorite falling on the Sixtine Chapel, and coronavirus killing everybody, to 1, or not even 1, no, because the outlets in the media don't allow people to go into what if, and what about this, and what about everything that can be done and that is already getting done in the world. So yeah, like I would like to hear more about these last lines on the headers, and way more. That would make me smile more.
Right. Yeah, we need to spread the positive story, the story of the thermostat species, the story of the caterpillar turned into the butterfly, and why it is part of nature. We have been part of nature for forever. We were never out. So nature has always been our guide. And so she's now guiding us through this little tiny virus to become the butterfly. So, because that is a story in which we are surrendering to the larger intelligence. That we are not the doer; we are being puppeted, right? And I think in that kind of story, we don't have to blame anyone. It's not a blame game at all. It's a story of the transformation that is happening, that has to happen.
I really love this energy that I feel right now connected by Zoom, by your words and by the energy you project. Just to be very clear, this is not a seller in the media. Like this goody talk and this like spiritual atmosphere is a ranking failure in the media. So that tells us about how the media needs to change, but it will change because of us. So like I may this energy, and it always is with you, be present in the time when we're involved in front of the mic with these expectations of creating rating and with these expectations of the collective trauma around us that sometimes influence our behavior. Like I am with you, and I believe that all people in Basecamp are with you, next to you, your ancestors, nature, everybody is with you in front of the mic. So I would like to say that feel us next to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jorge. And as we've been doing these 24-hour block parties, of which Dr. Sailesh Rao is a crucial pillar, we've all been experiencing this beautiful connection. And it's hard for me to put into words, but it's experiencing myself as part of a whole in a whole new way. And the fact that it is so virtual, this meeting is literally happening up in the clouds, right? We're all projecting ourselves, we're all teleporting up there and meeting up there in this virtual room where we cannot transmit disease to each other. And so it's sort of like an extension of our mind, heart, and spirit, right? Connecting with all the others. And Sailesh, I know you do a lot of Zoom video conferencing. We're starting to break records here with a number of hours per week on Zoom. So it's like rewiring my mind and my heart to be much more deeply connected to all of you.
Right.
And I know I'm speaking for Nolan as well, since he's 24 hours on every block party is along with me, and there's a bunch of others, notably James in Ireland has been putting in super long hours. So don't you guys feel it just changing you? Suddenly it's redefining who is me, who is you.
Mm-hmm.
I get this feeling of this abundance of like voices that is yeah, it's totally, there's some like tectonic shifts happening that and a lot of it is totally unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, who knows how much of this is being absorbed and processed in the background, you know, and yeah, such a wide variety diversity of voices that is like, it feels a little bit like paradoxical and disorienting because of that. But at the same time, I think that's the process that we all have to go through to refine, you know, out of all of these different perspectives. It's just necessarily kind of dizzying, just diving into it.
Right. You know, the analogy of the caterpillar and the butterfly has been around since the 70s. You know, there was a earlier book that talked about that, and I used that analogy in my Carbon Dharma book in 2011. And I had no idea at that point that we are literally going to be in a cocoon, which is what this virus is doing. We are literally going to be marinating in a cocoon, thinking about becoming an imaginal self, doing this kind of online gathering, and trying to write out and figure out and vision out the vegan world that we're going to be in. And I think this, it's amazing to me to watch this unfold and say, I had no idea that it was going to be like this. I had no idea it would be a little virus that would do this. But it is doing it. I mean, around the world, it is doing it. So this is nature at work. And we are just, you know, being taken along for the ride. She wanted homeostasis for herself, and she's getting it. She's making it happen. And all along, we had no idea that we were doing that, but we were doing it, right? We were heating up the earth. We didn't know that we were preventing the next ice age from happening. We had no idea. So I'd say, you know, I'm beginning to trust the larger process at play. Trust nature at play and say, how can I help? How can I help, you know, as this instrument?
Sailesh, I just want to acknowledge that I think it's such a magical space you came up with here. And I know none of us, you included, you just said, have no idea that it was going to turn into all of this. But the beauty of it is it seems to be bringing out the best and the highest in all of us. And I just want to acknowledge that because it's certainly doing that for me. And thank you again for allowing me to come in. Just, you know, off when you were out touring India, just to come in and start something, and it's flowering too. And so and it's amazing, and it's bringing out the best in me, and it's stuff I've wanted to share for decades now that's finally getting out. And I think I speak for a lot of people in saying that, and it's wonderful that you're the vehicle for it, and just the intelligence you bring to all of this and the clarity just kind of really sets the playing field. We know what we're up against, and we know where we're at, so we can each kind of define how we want to contribute. So thank you. Just really appreciate it. What you're bringing here.
I appreciate each and every one of you for bringing your gifts to this and making this flourish. You know, as a single person dancing, I wasn't doing much. But when all of you dance together, all of us dance together, we are doing something serious.
You know, for me, the block party is kind of like, you know, if there's a small town and there's just some crisis that hits the town, whether it's a volcano or a flood or whatever. What for me, this is kind of like the town center where we all come together and say, okay, what are we going to do? What do we need to focus on? Well, we need to do this, this, and this. And then we can branch out into teams that can then focus on the different facets. That's the vision of collective superintelligence. Right now, we're all just in one room. It's kind of like, hey, everybody, let's meet at the town square, and then we'll figure it out. It feels to me like we're still in the meeting at the town square phase, right? And yes, we're starting to figure some things out, but because we haven't figured out a way to kind of divide and conquer, it's just kind of one big general. The way that we're dividing is we're dividing by time slot, right? As opposed to dividing by separate channels. Right. Kamaya, great to see you. How are you?
And now you can hear.
Okay, very good. How are you, Kamaya?
Good.
Wonderful. Good to see you. And what do you think about all this that's going on, Kamaya, if I may?
Well, I don't know what you guys are talking about, so well.
We're talking about a vegan world and how to create a vegan world. We're imagining that now. So you're turning the caterpillar into the butterfly.
Oh, why not that story?
Yeah.
I'm very grateful of how you guys are working so hard to make this happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really your generation is making us do it. Because you know the virus doesn't affect kids below the age of 15. That's what I heard. Don't touch your face.
Who cares? I'm under 15, so who cares? I'm not gonna get the virus.
No, you get it, but you don't get affected by it. That's all.
Still. It's getting awkwardly very quiet.
Yeah, well, the thing is, Kamaya, we're all of us, grown-ups and children, elders, babies, we're all really being affected by this uniformly. It's affecting all of us. And we're all coming together to say, you know, what do we need to do? How do we need to work together in whole new ways? How do we need to transform our whole society, right? Now pretty much everyone's at home. Well, how do we grow food and distribute food and make sure everyone has enough to eat?
Just grow it in your backyard.
Exactly. Simple as that. Well, here's the thing, Kamaya. So depending on the climate, you see, it may take months for that food to produce. What do you eat in the months in between now and then?
Well, then go to your school and grow food and then bring it back.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying, Kamaya. So we need to, this is exactly the conversation we're having. What do we need to do? And I think we need you here in this conversation.
Right.
No, wait, what? It's getting silent again.
Hey, Kamaya, it's so nice to see you. I miss your face and love to see your hair.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
I want to share with you, Kamaya, that last weekend
Yes.
I went to good friends of mine. They are originally from Syria, and they came here to United States. I'm going to say about 5 years ago, because in Syria there's a lot of war, and the situation over there has been awful for a lot of years. So they immigrated to United States asking for help and asking for refugee. And United States accepted them under the policies of Barack Obama. So I went to their house, and it was amazing to see that in their backyard, they have a huge garden. It's beautiful. It's full of flowers, full of vegetables and fruits, strawberries. And I was thinking to myself, oh my gosh, these people that came from Syria 5 years ago, they are contributing more to heal Mother Earth than myself, because I don't have a garden. I really need to start working into building my own garden. And you know what? She pulled some beets. Do you know what are the beets? Those red?
I grow beets.
Oh, you do?
I
Oh my God,
full.
you're gonna have to share some with me.
But they're golden beets, not beets.
Oh, okay.
They're
The
the
ones that,
golden ones.
yeah, the ones that she gave me, those are the like the red ones,
Yeah.
which she gave me like 4 of them. And the next day I did a vegetable broth, and I have never put beets on a vegetable broth. They were a bomb. Like the vegetable broth came out so good. It was color red, but it was so delicious. Isn't it amazing? And you know what's the funny thing, that when I was cutting in little squares those red beets,
Yeah.
literally my hand was pitch red.
Wow.
Something that I realized, that when I go grocery shopping and I go to the store and I get those beets, they only have a little bit of juicy red color. I'm thinking
Mhm.
that it is very important to start making our own gardens, because we are going to definitely have more nutrient quality if we do this by ourselves.
It's really more easier when you have a garden bed because they grow more faster in garden beds than usual.
Yes.
We have tons of vegetables and fruits in our garden. Like,
Oh my God, I'm gonna have to go to your
flowers,
house.
beets. No, my school.
At your school? Oh, that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every
nice.
class has a garden in school.
Yes.
Wow.
We have tomatoes,
Kale,
kale, Swiss chard, peas. I think,
beets.
of course. And I think.
Did you plant potatoes too?
No, we didn't, but the other class did. Oh, spinach. There's something else. I just can't remember.
Carrots?
No.
Carrots.
No, we did grow carrots, but they didn't turn out well. I feel like there was another type of tomato that we planted, but I'm not sure. My mind is all over the place.
Well, you know what? Back then, I used to live in a big, big house with a huge front yard and a huge backyard, and I planted tomatoes. I planted cilantro, and I had to give cilantro to all my neighbors because the cilantro started growing like crazy. But it was a beautiful smell every night to sit around those plants. You just enjoy that sense that those plants create within your environment.
My best friend, like every single year on her birthday, she has this big orange tree. We always go to Pecos Park to celebrate her birthday, and she would always have a big bag of oranges waiting for me to eat. They were nice and juicy and ripe. It was just...
How delicious. Do you like spicy? Like
Yeah.
putting a little bit of chili on your oranges?
No, I haven't really tried that.
You have to try it. It's so good.
I really don't like oranges with toothpaste.
With toothpaste. Okay.
With chili powder.
Not my fave. Definitely not.
It was not my favorite either. With me mixing up fruits with chili, it was not my thing. But once I started tasting it, it was a bomb. I cannot live without eating citrus, oranges or tangerines and all those citrus fruits with a little bit of salt and chili. It's good.
Actually, me and my dad found some star fruit and dragon fruit at Whole Foods for like $2 each. We tried it. Unfortunately, the dragon fruit tastes like onions.
Really?
Yes, and it was all white, no color.
Yeah, dragon fruit, I think it tastes better if you eat it in tacos.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. And my grandpa, in my favorite minestrone soup, he once put my golden beet leaves in there. It was so good. So good.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah.
Yeah, she even cuts all the vegetables for me for the minestrone.
Really? That is so cute. Isn't it amazing, Kamaya, that
Yeah.
the soil has that ability of doing the whole photosynthesis process and how the soil has minerals and vitamins, and then it just needs a little bit of water and sun, and all of a sudden we start getting those plants.
Yeah.
How smart and how beautiful Mother Earth is, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. With a lot of time that we're going to be spending with our kids this next couple of weeks, we need to start considering making a garden in every house.
When I saw my beet leaves coming out, I was so excited. I was jumping all over the place so we have like a rocks box in our school. All the kids have a rocks box except for like the toddlers. And so we have like little houses that we can like build. And so there's a such thing as blobs and rocks as money.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't use the money though, honestly. But I just keep picking my beets because they're delicious. They're actually like one of the sweetest things I've ever tasted. And I've tasted really sweet things.
Wow.
And they were so ripe and juicy. I felt like my whole mouth was gonna turn yellow. Literally.
Kimaya, this is Jorge from Mexico. I'm very happy to hear you talk about eating fruits and veggies the way you do. It's really inspiring. And I don't know if you like music as much as eating plants, but I shared a song that you reminded me of Jack Johnson, the Sharing song.
Well, it depends.
This song, sharing song, is right here. Yeah, we'll listen to it when we get to the other place. We have to leave soon.
All
yeah,
right.
because we are in California, and so
You're in
I have
California.
to go see my cousins. I gotta pick my little cousin up from
That's cool.
aftercare. So yeah.
Yeah, we have this. We consider this to be our last trip for a while. So,
Seriously?
Yeah.
No!
Well, that's what's going to happen.
Why?
So yeah,
Why?
we just came to see our cousins, and then we're going to go back on Sunday.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Safe on travels.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And enjoy your block party.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you both. Great.
Bye.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Wow. Well, we've been at the block party for 7 hours straight now. Our next scheduled speaker for 2 p.m., Michael Gallo, he just texted me they're having a community meeting in Shasta, where he lives in Mount Shasta. And so he was at that for the last several hours. So the bottom line is this is not a good day for him to present at 2 o'clock, but he will check in. He'll pop in at 2 and say hello to everyone, hang out for a few minutes. And so we'll just have a brief check-in. So we've got a fair amount of, open time, but let's figure out what we want to do with that time. Here, I'm going to go ahead and stop the previous recording.